you give I think it would be appropriate to give a round of applause to our catering team and taking Thank you guys for doing a great job. Really, really great job. At this time, I'd like to invite our Dean of the School of Business, Patricia James, to come up and say a few words.
I would like to welcome each of you to our second biannual, a little off schedule due to COVID, but our second biannual leadership conference. So the Foster 62 Center for Responsible Leadership started their first conference in 2019, and we're proud to have our second one. And this year's theme, Leadership and Authentic Community, I think is most fitting. When you think about the environment that we're living in, leadership is critical. And building authentic community is also critical. We try to develop students such that they will go out and change the world or take over the business world is what I hope they're going to do, right? But we're also building leaders that are concerned with more than just the bottom line. Our tagline is for the greater or the common good and the bottom line. And this conference really fits into this. We've been gearing up all week. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we had dynamic speakers come in and talk to us about critical things. And so I'm very excited to have each of you here. I know that you will have wonderful presentations tomorrow, and we're looking forward. I had a privilege of hearing Andy on Thursday. Thursday, my days are running together. Thursday, right? Thursday. So tonight I told him I'm excited to hear what he's going to talk about tonight. I don't know if he can talk Thursday, but it was extremely exciting, and it fit directly into our mission. He talked about, building businesses that do more than just make money, but build community. So I'm excited that you all are here to participate. I am grateful to all the students who have helped Dr. Gallagher put this together, and also to Dr. Gallagher for his dedication and the time that he spent putting on this conference. So thank you all. Welcome.
Thank you, Dean James. So I really wanted to come up here and wing it, like I see other professionals do, but Andy has such a list of accolades, I had to write it down. So our keynote speaker tonight, Dr. Andrew Gustafson. Andy is a professor at the Heider School of Business at Creighton University. Dr. Gustafson focuses on business ethics, business and its societal effects, corporate social responsibility, ethical issues in marketing and public policy, as well as unintended, good and bad, externalities of business. He's especially interested in how business can contribute to the common good. In addition to a wide range of published scholarship, Andy has given more than 100 academic or professional presentations at conferences and workshops regionally, nationally, and internationally. Besides his role at Creighton, Andy has just been named the Executive Director of the Society of Business Ethics for the 2022-2027 term. Before Andy comes up, I'd like to just talk for a minute about the topic. And I was discussing the topic early on, maybe in September, with Andy, and the notion of authentic community. And, the idea is that, and many people have come to me since and said, what's that mean? What's that mean? What's this thing about? What do I keep hearing about, And the idea is that, and I'm sure the students can identify that maybe they have multiple Instagram accounts, one for mom and dad, one for their friends, one for the boss, and certainly Facebook. We all know that if you search Google for a beach umbrella, Facebook is going to just pepper you with beach umbrellas, right? So there's something going on out there, and there's an enormous amount of division and fractured society. And I think it's our mission to try and at least talk about that and at least find a way to bring some of us back together, you know? So, and as a matter of fact, right when we were talking about that, the Facebook whistleblower came out and said that Facebook was undermining democracy in small countries because of the way they deliver their content, you know? So I think it's really a topical thing. It's very important to talk about. The next thing I want to talk about is, out of full disclosure, I don't have a Facebook account. But many of you are friends with my dog on Facebook. So this is full disclosure. As a matter of fact, I went to a friar at a recent social gathering here who had just defriended my dog. And I said, hey, I got a bone to pick with you. And he's like, what? I said, you defriended my dog on Facebook. So we're friends again. We're friends again. And I'm quite sure that my dog has no malicious intent with her Facebook content. You know? She'll make a comment like, you know, haha, Michael went out the door with 2 different shoes on. So that's my full disclosure. Without any more ado, I really would like to welcome Andy here, and I look forward to what he has to say. And thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Michael. It's just been a pleasure to be here. I had not actually met Michael until yesterday. It was our first time meeting in person. We talked on Zoom before, and we talked in other formats, but he's just a great guy. Mike's the real deal. What you see is what you get, and I sure appreciate your authenticity. So thank you. I would expect no less, because I already knew your brother, John. Kind of peas in a pod there. You're both that kind of a person, and I appreciate both of you very much. Thank you very much for having me here tonight. Thank you, Dean James. Thank you for your warm words there. And yesterday was a lot of fun talking with the students and getting to engage them. I've been very impressed with the students here, and I got to sit with some in the back at the table again. And everyone I've met has just been top-notch in quality, and I'm so grateful to be here and get to meet such great people. So thank you. Thank you for taking time to be here. I hope that what I have to say is worthwhile, and I'm sorry that I'm here and the presentation's over there, but you don't need to look at me all the time. I hope you can look at the slides once in a while. The first slide there, though, I thought you might find interesting. You might recognize it. That's not our conference attendees, but it is here on campus in front of the oratory many, many years ago. So I kind of like that place. We went to visit it today, and you really have a lot of remarkable things here on campus, and I appreciated that in particular. So the conference today is, or that's starting today, is Leadership and Authentic Community. And I will say this, a lot of my talk from today is based on what Michael and I have discussed about some of our initial concerns and what we thought would be relevant. I'm going to talk about some macro stuff that's going on in society at large, but really what I hope you'll come away with is some particulars, some personal existential takeaways for yourself. So I'm not trying to give us a broad proposal here as to how to reunite all of society, because I really think that depends on each of us doing our small part. If there's anything I can emphasize to you, and I always emphasize it to my students, each of us has a unique calling that God has given us and could give no one else, because each of us are in an idiosyncratic, unique situation. You've got things that you can do that I can't do. I've got things I can do that no one else could do. And that's just because of the position that God's put us in, the people that we're around, the people that God brings into our path each day and each moment. So each of you has something unique to bring. And I just want you to have eyes to think about how might you be able to do that at this time? Because in some ways, it's a very discouraging time. So we'll get into that now as we go forward. I hope you'll like this next slide too. So authentic human leadership and the common good in an age of AI, Zoom meetings, and virtual society. That guy is how I often felt going through COVID the last couple of years. Like, what's next? Where is everybody? I don't know for sure what he's thinking, but feeling a bit anxious about the situation. And that's how I felt at times. Not as bad as some, but it's just been an unnerving world. So the goals are, we are business people here, so the ROI, what's the return on investment from this talk? You're sitting here for a while, what are you going to get out of it? The first is going to be a setup of our current disruptive situations, both societal and business, and then we're also going to talk about big data, artificial intelligence, a little bit of that too. So those are the three areas of disruptive situations. We won't just focus on that, but that's going to be the front end. Then analyze the disruptions and their effects. We're going to talk about sort of an analysis of that from a Catholic social thought perspective. I might bring in a little bit of Jesuit stuff. I know we're here at a Franciscan school, but I'm a Jesuit, sorry. And then also liquid modern situations. So you might, I don't know, has anyone ever heard of Zygmunt Bauman before? I didn't think so. But Zygmunt Bauman is an amazing guy. He wrote, I think, 15 books in his last 15 years of his life between the age of 80 and 95, and died only just within the last 5 years, but remarkable. I sort of had a man crush on him, academic man, but a man crush on him because I fell in love with his books in one Christmas break while I was a professor. I read 12 of his books over Christmas break. I was so infatuated with his work. So he was a big impact on me, but he talks about liquid modernity, and I think it's a useful way to conceive of what's going on and maybe why we feel the way that we do. Third thing is to consider options and advice on leading as, and I'm talking, this can go for students too, but I'm especially thinking about professors and administrators. So we face a lot of societal disruption and challenges right now, and this is a quote from Zygmunt Bauman: "Uncertainty is the natural habitat of human life, though the hope of escaping uncertainty is the engine of life pursuits." So we all live in uncertainty. That's just part of what it's always like. I think it's kind of been ramped up to 11 in the last few years. But what we do as humans is we try to gain some certainty or some sort of stability in the midst of all that uncertainty, right? That's what we're doing, that we kind of have it more than ever today. So first, societal disruptions. Even if you just think about the last 5 or 6 years, what are some things that have come on our screen and probably made our lives more difficult, given us more things that have made it harder sometimes for us to communicate with others, and also to deal with what are our students going on, what's going on with our students, what's going on with their families. First one is COVID, right? So we've got masks, remote, fortunately we aren't wearing masks tonight, that's great. Remote work, Zoom meetings, isolation, all these sorts of things that have come from COVID and caused a lot of disruption in our lives, caused us to become more isolated, and made us have to figure out how to redo things, even if it's just for the short term. So that's been one cause of frustration and cause of anxiety and cause of division in some ways in society. Another one is the Black Lives Matter that has really taken off. It's been a blessing in many respects, but it's also been a source of division in our country. It's been difficult to have some of the conversations we needed to have. And you've still got people that are at different levels of what they feel comfortable with or not comfortable with, or what should be done or shouldn't be done. And so that's another issue that's come up in recent years that's in the midst of COVID, even brought us further apart at times, or just caused more uncertainty. LGBTQ things, I mean, we've had that. I mean, it's hard to imagine, but the first state that legalized gay marriage was in 2004, and it wasn't until 2015 that all the United States legalized it, and that was only 6 years ago. So that's changed dramatically, and now there's been a lot more things going on with the trans movement and things like that. So just a lot of upheaval, a lot of family dissensions about certain topics in that area, all kinds of things. So that's been another issue that's brought a lot of upheaval and uncertainty for us. Political intensification. I love that you can find stickers on the gas pump that say Biden did that with Trump, and then there's other things where the people, but I did that. And so you've got all this dissension, all the political intensification, again, even within our families, much less among our colleagues or in our schools. This political intensification has made everything more difficult to discuss certain sorts of issues. So that's another one that's come up. And on a global level, and we heard about the bombings today in Ukraine of the train station again, but turn from globalization to nationalism. Ukraine's one of the few things that's brought us together as a world, and that's unfortunate that we have to have something like that do it. But Brexit in the last couple of years, you've got the United States and China fighting with one another. Of course, was it Make America Great Again campaign, but even in France, Le Pen is one of the top. I think she's the one that's leading against Macron. I mean, she's the top contender to Macron right now in France. In Poland, we've seen a lot of this nationalism. So all over the world, there's more and more nationalism happening and less globalization. So these are difficult things to try to deal with. And then there's generational divides. I was born in '69, so I can kind of identify with that guy on the left. That's 1968, and no tattoos, and then the other guy's completely tattooed. But so it's generational divides. I still get the Wall Street Journal delivered to my house every day in paper form. And a lot of my students wonder, what in the world am I cutting all those trees down for? So there's a lot of generational divides between us sometimes that make it hard, or make it feel like, why are they doing things that way? Why are they doing things that way? Back and forth. But there are also, and this is important to us as business people, business disruptions. This has maybe affected the way that we think about our classes, that we think about business in general. It's hard enough to get used to them, much less to critically analyze them, because sometimes they happen so quickly. But questioning of profit maximization has been around for a bit now. But Jack Welch said in 2011, I think the dumbest idea in the world is profit maximization. And yet we still often teach that to our students. And so there's still a lot of debate about this, a lot of discussion. Is this right? Is this wrong? Questioning the winner take all. We can all remember Occupy Wall Street a number of years ago, but that still is a hot button topic about how are we going to, should we redistribute wealth? How should that happen? So that makes it difficult to know. And also work from home shift, what that means for corporate culture. I've got a niece in Grand Island, Nebraska, where she worked for Lincoln Financial, and they decided to have everyone work from home, and then they decided this will be permanent, so we're selling the building. So she will never have a building to go back to be with her community. How they're going to onboard people, I don't think they've quite figured that out yet. How will you bring them into a community when there is no building or physical community is going to be hard. So these are hard questions, and we've got some of our students graduating who are going right into that situation where they're going to be onboarded virtually. And so how do we help? How do we even, hard for me to wrap my mind around that, much less help a student know how they're going to survive and even flourish in that sort of environment, right? Monopolistic control, monopolies, we certainly can think of Facebook and Amazon and Apple, but there are a lot of monopolies, and what do we have to say about that? Or do we just try to keep up with it, all the different acquisitions that take place? Media shifts, exponential increase in information. I think it's doubling, information is doubling every 11 months now. So it's no wonder it's hard to keep up with that. And it's no wonder that we're forgetting so many things, right? Because with all that new knowledge, there's a lot that's going to get forgotten and left aside. Private publishing, private production of music, videos, films, podcasts, porn, everything. So all this is done without the established gatekeepers that we used to have. And so it changes the way that you do business. It changes the way that you think about business. And there's a decline in standard media outlets. We know that too. No more NBC, ABC, CBS, and all that. And this is an interesting stat about books. I don't know if I can quite read it, but the circulation of physical circulation has dropped 48%, and electronic circulation has increased 53% just since 2015 for sure, but maybe even since 2017. So that's a pretty remarkable shift where there's more and more things being checked out. I did, thank you very much, stop at your library this afternoon, and you were putting out a bunch of free books. So I have at least, 9 or 10 over in Mike's office. So I appreciate those, and I'll make sure that they are well used. But if those of us who like books are really the dinosaurs nowadays. So that's a change too for us as professors. So some difficulties connecting all these current dots, right? It's just a little bit hard to figure out how do we put all this together. But if that wasn't enough, also the challenges and disruptions of AI, big data, and social media. So those are more concerns that are on our doorstep at the moment. I don't know if, who's seen Social Dilemma? Who has seen that? Okay. If you haven't, I highly recommend it, but I also warn you, I have a colleague at Creighton who co-runs the Business Ethics Alliance, and I told him to watch it, and he said, A, that was one of the best films I've seen in a long time, and I could hardly go to sleep last night. And B, I will never ask you for a movie recommendation again. So it's a powerful film, and it really raises some questions that might keep you up at night, especially if you have kids or grandkids. So it's challenging, but it's a good one to watch, and it helps you get into that discussion. This is a quote from a book that recently came out, I think in 2019, by Frischman and Selinger. And I think it does a good job of kind of highlighting the problem that we have with the use of social media and also these data issues in general. Like climate change, there are an incredible variety of small-scale decisions we each make about technology that seem on their own terms rational and unproblematic. Yet the increments aggregate, and we suffer if we fail to account for the systematic effects of our decisions, including the production of negative externalities and the impacts on ourselves and future generations. I think that really sums up what I want to talk about here when it comes to AI and social media in particular. So again, these small scale decisions that lead to systematic effects, right? That's the heart of that quote. What are examples of small scale decisions? I don't know if you noticed, if you heard this back, there were required Fitbits at Oral Roberts University in 2016. Great idea. All the students will be fit. You can make sure that your students are getting in so many days, so many steps per day, whatever. And everyone was required to do PE, phys ed, every semester during their entire time there. So it would help them to stay fit. They might not gain the freshman 15, right? Maybe we'll help them not to gain that freshman 15. What they didn't really think about was now we're monitoring all the students. All of our students have basically a dog collar on to monitor them so we can know where they're at. And so that was a side they hadn't really thought about. They had good intentions, but there was a lot of backlash from that. There had been the same kind of proposals at a lot of K-12 schools across the country. And again, it's good intentions, but then you think, what's the long-term implication of this possibly? Virtual shopping, another example where it's been great for us during COVID. Haven't had to go out, don't have to deal with people. It's great, I can get stuff just shipped to me. I don't know what the statistics are. We would have to ask Ben to do an economic analysis of what the costs are in terms of global footprint of all the Amazon boxes that get shipped to my house and to your house every week. I probably get 10 different boxes shipped to my house. And so am I helping the environment with virtual shopping because I'm not driving to the store, or am I actually causing more harm to the environment? I don't know the answer to that, but there's a lot of interesting questions to think about. Is this really a good thing? And how has it affected our retail outlets, right? How has it affected, I mean, I know how it's affected them in Omaha, and I think it's affected them across the country in negative ways. Texting and not talking. When I was a kid, I was told by my mom, stop talking to them on the phone, go out and go have a real conversation with your friend. And so I did that. Now I know parents who say, stop texting to them, just call them on that phone. And so it's a different level, right, of where we're at. Trying to get them to have communication sometimes, but even at a much more, at the level that I was criticized for, now that's what we're aiming at. And so that's quite a shift. I was with my students a couple of weeks ago. We had an Encounter Christ retreat at our retreat center, and the students were sitting around after the dinner, and we weren't supposed to have our phones, and nobody did. And we were talking, and we all go on great, but one of the students said, it's kind of weird, isn't it, to not have our phones? Because like now there was no hot topic going on, so I was just going to check my phone, and there were others like, yeah, it's really strange to not have it. And it becomes, it becomes our automatic, that's our go-to, that's our reflex, is to go look at our phone if there's no one talking about it. Last, insurance monitors. Great idea in theory. Telematics lets insurance companies see how you drive, so then you can pay less for your insurance. And the really bad drivers are the ones that are going to have to pay more money. Wonderful at one level, but you also then are monitored, right? When will the government maybe use that and just issue you tickets, right? Whenever you speed, you'll just get another ticket. We already don't like the camera monitors that give us tickets. I really don't think we'd like that. So the effects of small decisions, the systematic effects of small decisions. These are a couple examples. They come from China, but we could look closer to home. But here's an example from China. What your face may tell lenders about whether your credit worthy. China's huge insurer Ping uses facial recognition technology to verify identities as well as examine expressions for clues about their truthfulness and access the risk of the insured, but also keeps agents from skipping meetings. We do use this in the United, some companies use this in the United States right now. As they're doing the interview with the student, our students who are going to them, they're doing the interview, but they're also having face recognition to watch their facial features in some cases, or to listen to the words that they're using and how they use them to see if they think they're telling the truth. So we're using this even sometimes in interviews today in the United States. So this is going on, and it's a concern, I think. Now this is where you have small steps that lead to bigger potential problems. And in China's social credit system, you've maybe heard of this already before. It's not nationwide yet, but it's piecemeal here and there. But China's social credit system rates a person's reputation using in part China's mass surveillance systems, potentially to ban some citizens from flying or using the train, throttling your internet speeds, banning your kids from the best schools, keeping you from getting the best jobs or rooms at the best hotels, potentially even taking away your dog or cat, depending on what your pet is. So those are the kind of things that it's being used for today. And sometimes it's judged on how many times you use the back door instead of the front door, because maybe you're trying to avoid them if you're going out the back door. So that's kind of, when it gets on steroids, that's where it could go. A problem with this social approach that China's using right now, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to get a little bit closer, my eyes are getting bad, but it's an externalist approach. So in business, we sometimes use externalist approaches, which means you're using external forces to get people to do things. Like there's a nice study done on if you spray surfaces with lemon scented Lysol, it actually will reduce unethical behavior by 18%, according to some study. That's an externalist approach. An internalist approach is trying to transform you inside and get you to build a better character. So you'll do the right thing even when no one's looking, right? So it's simply an externalist approach. This is an example of an externalist approach. It's like a panopticon where you have a jail where the jail guard can see everybody in every single jail cell in this jail. It undermines individual freedom, though, and choice by eliminating true privacy. This is my point here. Without privacy, there's no chance to do right without reward. I don't think you can truly be ethical if you don't have privacy. If you don't have privacy, someone's watching. If I walk around with a body cam and I always do the right thing, that's different than if I don't have anyone watching me and I do the right thing. Right? The different kind of ethicality is like, when the child is getting watched by their mom and dad, then they do the right thing. That's different than when mom and dad are far away and they're doing the right thing. So it's a superficial, common good aim without protection of dignity in the person or difference, which is not the common good at all when you have this mass surveillance state. The bottom line is privacy and decision making are essential to human dignity. Sorry, I keep forgetting there, but the basic problem is the elimination of the human in that situation, right? And this is from Jesuit stuff, but from the start, the spiritual exercises encourage purposeful reflection. However, the exercises do not just encourage reflection upon an abstract final end. Rather, they have the person purposefully contemplate the way he or she directs his or her life towards the good of God. As spiritual exercises, the exercises encourage individual reflection on the movements of the soul by the divine spirit and its ungodly opposite, God and the evil spirit. So that's really, I mean, in the Jesuit tradition, and I think in the Franciscan tradition, and the Christian tradition, we're about reflecting. What am I doing? I want to do it somehow for a higher purpose, for the glory of God, and you want to reflect on that. And that's an important part of it. But when we have these external things affecting us, there's not as much of that chance for reflection. Social media, internet addiction. So there's plenty of books you can buy about internet addiction. It's sort of it's considered to be a real thing, and anywhere from, depending on what country you're in, anywhere from 7 to 18% of people seem to have internet addiction of one sort or another. Nomophobia, just, that you don't like not having your phone around. This has gone up pretty dramatically. Even in recent years, it's gone up a lot. So people just don't feel comfortable when they don't have their phone around so they can find out what's going on. I remember one of the topics that Mike and I talked about that's not very funny at all is that you have a lot of teen angst going on, and a lot of teens that are self-harming themselves. You have a high rate of teen suicide that's gone up significantly. And this is directly connected in many respects to this sort of direct connection to what other people are thinking all the time and being very concerned about that. One of my guys that works for me, he's got a daughter who's 13, and she's been in and out of the hospital for the last year, probably at least once a month, sometimes twice a month, oftentimes for self-harm. And he says she gets bullied, but she gets bullied on her phone 24/7. He said, when I was a kid, I got bullied, but then I went home and then I had my family and they loved me. And so for at least 16, 18 hours of the day, I didn't have any bullying to put up with. Now my daughter's got bullying 24/7. And he says, so what do I do? Take away her phone and punish her? And how do you do that? It's a hard question, right? So that's part of this connection, is you've got those kind of issues that are arising, especially with youth. But honestly, I see plenty of people that are well over 50 that are hanging out with, I don't know if it's their kids or their grandkids, but they're on their phone while their kids like trying to have looking around at the world, and their parents on the phone. So it doesn't just go for one generation or another. And I know some of my friends who are in their 50s or 60s are just as connected to their phone as any teenager I've ever met. So the harms of social media internet addiction. This article actually just came out in the Business Ethics Quarterly here in January by Velasquez is great. Manny Velasquez has been around forever. He started the Santa Clara Business Ethics Center out there. But these are the things, and I think we all know about poor bodily health. You don't get as much sleep if you look at your phone right before you go to bed, of course, especially. But it can dull the senses, imagination, and thought. There can be emotional deficits that come from having too much connection with your social media accounts, with the internet, or poor practical reasoning in terms of autonomy and self-direction. You maybe just don't make as many decisions for yourself. You're guided more by what you see. Isolation and loneliness. Strangely enough, the more that we're connected, sometimes the lonelier and more isolated we feel. And we don't have a lot of play or interaction with the world or with others. The more that you're on your phone, I mean, you can have connection to others, right? But a lot of times it ends up with you being more passive and not going out and wanting to be in the world, not wanting to be in nature, not wanting to have direct contact with people. And finally, like we talked about before, there are some statistics that seem to show that suicide has gone up as well with some of this addiction. So it's not that use is addiction, obviously, but with addiction, it can lead to these things for sure. The second issue then, social media, but then also AI. I took a picture of this last week when I was going home. For a contactless day of travel, download our app now. There used to be people want to travel to like experience new places and meet new people. But now I can travel contactless without having to deal with anybody, right? And that's what I'm after. It seems sort of oxymoronic, but that's what people are hoping for. The less I can deal with others, the better. So the blessings and curses. Obviously with AI, with an app that we have, or even with Amazon helping us do this or that, or telling us what we maybe want, or maybe we do want. It avoids the trouble of doing it ourselves. It spares us from mundane annoyances, to have that app do it for us on a regular basis so I don't have to think about it. We avoid having to adjust our conduct via interaction with others. So I just don't have to adjust because it's frictionless. I'm not dealing with you. And we avoid having to adapt to new situations. So it's great. I don't have to go to the grocery store. I just order it and it comes to me, and I don't have to deal with people. I don't have to drive anywhere or deal with crazy drivers. It's wonderful. But I also don't have to adapt to new situations. And that's part of how we grow as human beings and grow in character as we face difficult struggles and difficult situations. So it's part of the curse that comes with this blessing as well. So again, this goes back to Fleischman and Selinger, that book I mentioned before, but convenience can lead to disengagement, less personal interaction, increased passivity, emotional detachment, decreased agency. I'm not doing stuff myself, I'm more just letting it down. Decreased responsibility. When you have artificial intelligence driving the car, if it gets in an accident, who's responsible? Elon Musk? You, because you weren't driving at the time? Hard to know. Like, those are things we're still trying to figure out. But it doesn't seem like it's fully my responsibility anymore. Increased ignorance. There's a lot of skills that people are losing as they have AI do things for them. I've experienced that myself. And there's de-skilling and demotivating. As you have AI doing these various things for you through your app or through other things where decisions are just made for you, and you don't have to make those decisions. So far, so good? Picking up what I'm putting down? All right. So analysis. So now we go into analysis of these things. What do we have to say from a Catholic social thought point of view, and what would Zygmunt Bauman have to say about this to describe it? Even though he died right before COVID and all that happened. So this is interesting. Those things that we just talked about with frictionless AI. AI can habituate less personal interaction, increased passivity, emotional detachment, decreased agency, decreased responsibility, increased ignorance, de-skilling, and demotivating. Put those right beside Catholic social thought principles, and you see the challenge: human dignity, common good. And again, with Catholic social thought, what do I mean by common good? We mean that we're providing the conditions for the possibility of flourishing for everybody. How are we providing the conditions for the possibility of flourishing for everybody? Rights and responsibilities. How does that go with decreased responsibility or decreased agency? Not very good. Subsidiarity. Subsidiarity is a concept in general that we each have a domain that we're responsible for. Parents are responsible for their children. And if I'm a boss, I should ask my workers, hey, what's going on down there? What would be the best way to solve this problem? You guys give me some input. Because I got to make the decision, but I want your input. That's subsidiarity, letting people that are aware the problem is make the decisions to a certain extent, but also each one of us has domains. I'm a professor, I have certain obligations. You're the student, you have certain obligations. That's the way it is. And we each need to play our role well. Preference for the poor. So what are we doing with all the AI stuff? How are we helping the poor? Or are we disenfranchising them more? Because they don't have access to some of these things. Solidarity. We've already talked about all the disunity that's happening and the isolation that's happening from some of these things. And stewardship of creation. Again, is virtual shopping really helping? Is it not? Are we using more cardboard than ever? What's going on? So that's an interesting contrast. It's maybe even more interesting from Jesuit values because they're more specific. But cura personalis, care for the whole person, while I'm also emotionally detached from everybody else. I don't even want to be with people, much less for them. Right? And so I'm supposed to be with and for people. I don't even want to be with them. Doesn't fit. It's a bad fit. Forming and educating agents of change. So on the one hand, I'm trying to get my students to be agents of change, form them into the kind of individuals who love and care about others, want to change the world. And I think whether you're Jesuit school or not, I'm going to move this from a whether you're Jesuit school or not, the students here, your professors want you to be the change makers. They obviously do. The dean has talked many times since I've just been here for barely 24 hours that she wants you to go out and affect the common good and support the common good. How do we do what we do? Make money and also support the common good. That's not normal. You're being trained in business in abnormal ways, abnormally good ways. And that's what we're trying to do at our Catholic schools, especially. So how are we doing that? And but on one hand, that's my goal. But then I also know there's this other thing going on over here that's making people be more passive, making them not have as much responsibility. Magis, choosing the best, the excellent. During COVID, I think for a lot of us, I mean, when we got asked as professors to teach everything online with 2 weeks notice, we weren't going for excellence, we were going for survival. And I think for a lot of people across the board during COVID, we've aimed much lower. We're in a desperate situation here. What's the best we can do given our very meager situation? And that's the way we've started to operate. But we don't want to get in that habit. That's a danger for all of us. And ad majorem Dei gloriam, I've got this idea. I haven't done it yet on my phone. So ad majorem Dei gloriam is just everything for the glory of God, right? For the greatest glory of God. So I'm going to put that on my phone. Because every time that I didn't bring my phone tonight, I left it back on purpose. Sometimes I really like not having my phone on myself. But I have that on my phone. So every time I use my phone, I think, how am I using this for the glory of God? why am I looking at these stupid YouTube videos? I don't look at cats, I look at other stupid stuff. Like, why am I looking up like last night I watched Planet of the Apes, which that's probably not useful either, but it's like looking into like the historical background of Planet of the Apes movie or something, like what am I doing? Why am I doing that with this phone? Like, how am I using this for the glory of God? How am I using my phone to promote human dignity? How am I using it for the common good? Am I using it as an escape to not be connected to the rest of you? Or am I using it somehow to do these other good things? So that's my positive challenge to you. AI, big data, social media, they're not evil. They're not evil. They're things that can be used for the glory of God. Everything can be used for the glory of God, I think. And so how can we use this for the glory of God? And that's really our mission. How do we use these things for the common good and to bring about the things that we all hope for? Positive, there are positive apps, right? Very positive apps. There's apps you can get an app that says, you've been on Facebook for an hour today, better stop, right? You can get these apps that'll say, beep, beep, beep. Like, you wanted to stop, remember? Oh yeah, I wanted to stop. I do want to, okay, I'll stop. Health and well-being apps that help you to stay healthier. Social responsibility apps, media and civic engagement apps, like this one at the bottom, Bang the Table, where like you get more civically engaged by using that app and it helps you find out about things going on around you to change the world. Skill maintenance apps and personal edification apps. I had a Lenten exercise app that was telling me something to read every day as a devotional. That's great. It's a good use of my phone. Better than watching stupid YouTube videos about Charlton Heston. So that's a Catholic social thought. Then we get to Zygmunt Bauman. This is Zygmunt, and he's an interesting character. Was an interesting character, great guy. And liquid modernity was his concept that he talked about. So this is again, there's a couple of long quotes here, and I'm sorry for the long quotes, but I think they're worthwhile. So first of all, the passage from the solid to liquid phase of modernity, that is, into a condition in which social forms can no longer and are not expected to keep their shape for long, because they decompose and melt faster than the time it takes to cast them. And once they are cast, for them to set. Forms, whether already present or only adumbrated, are unlikely to be given enough time to solidify and cannot serve as frames of reference for human actions and long-term life strategies because of their short life expectation. Indeed, a life expectation shorter than the time it takes to develop cohesive and consistent strategy, still shorter than the fulfillment an individual life project requires. So his point here is things are shifting so fast that the new thing we build doesn't have time to solidify before we tear it down and build the next new thing. So things are just shifting so much all the time. We're just in this constant liquidity. There's not a chance for things to solidify. And you think it used to be helpful to have knowledge of the past? Not so much anymore. And we'll get to that in a second. So this is the state of liquid modernity, where everything seems to be changing all the time. He says we can be certain of one thing only. They would rejoin that the next month or next year will be unlike the time we are living in now. That being different, they will invalidate a lot of the knowledge we have now and much of the know-how that we are currently using. That much of what we've learned we'll surely have to forget. While we'll have to get rid of many things which we are proud of and for which we are praised today, and the choices most the choices most recommended today may be decried tomorrow as shameful blunders. When things are moving that fast, it's very difficult to feel invested, to want to build something, because you're afraid, well, who knows, in another couple of years, who knows if this is even going to be relevant anymore. So what's the point? And I think there are plenty of our students that feel that as well. What's the point? And so we're trying to teach them things, but things are changing so fast. I was impressed with myself for getting this backdrop picture because it's about deconstruction. The collapse of long-term thinking, planning and acting, and the disappearance of weakening social structures in which thinking, planning, and acting could be inscribed for a long time to come leads to a splicing of both political history and individual lives into a series of short-term projects and episodes which are in principle infinite, do not combine into the kinds of sequences to which concepts like development, maturation, career, or progress, all suggesting a preordained order of succession, could be meaningfully applied. So it's harder and harder to imagine having a career where you have a career that's the same thing for a long extended period of time. Things are shifting so very quickly. Long-term planning and thinking. I remember my colleague that came from Loyola, our dean at Creighton has been there since I came, and that was 17 years ago. So we've had consistency, and I love that. And he said he's maybe going to retire in 2025, and now I'm terrified because I have other friends who have deans that come in every 2 or 3 years, and there's a new plan, and there's a new thing that's going to happen. And so then they think, well, what's going to happen next? And so I don't know what's going to happen next because we've had the same dean for 20 years. But that kind of stability, how do you keep on having consistent stability over time? It seems hard, right? In all different kinds of respects. This change is constant all the time. Change, change, change. So what the virtues are in liquid modernity, he says, he doesn't like this, but he says what follows is that the skill we really need to acquire, first and foremost, is flexibility. A neutered and so currently politically correct name for spineless. The capacity to forget fast and promptly dispose of past assets that have turned into liabilities, as well as the ability to change tacks and tracks on short notice without regret. And then what we really need to remember forever is the need to avoid swearing lifelong loyalty to anyone and anybody. And so that's the virtue. That's what it takes to survive and it takes to succeed in a liquid modern world. To be flexible, to forget things quickly, and to not be too bogged down in the past, whatever that past knowledge or history is. In that situation, though, it's impossible to calculate what sort of future profits, if any, a present sacrifice may bring. So why should one surrender the instant pleasures one can squeeze out from the here and now? So you end up with sort of an immediate satisfaction being all there is for you to live for. For tomorrow we may die, right? Last quote from Zeit. In a society of shoppers and life of shopping, we are happy as long as we haven't lost the hope of becoming happy. We are secure from unhappiness as long as some of that hope is still ticking. And so the key to happiness and the antidote to misery is to keep the hope of becoming happy alive. And he says the way that we do that is through consumerism. So we always hope for the next thing. And then I get that, and I'm like, this is sort of disappointing. Oh, but there's another new one. And so you go for the next one. And so you keep doing that. Oh, there's going to be a new Apple phone. That'll be even better than this one, right? Or there's going to be a new whatever you're doing. So it doesn't matter. Fill in the blank. But that's the consumer, that's the messianic that we have in liquid modernity, where we're hoping for the next thing on the horizon, the next thing that I can get to, the next experience I can get to, the next cruise I can go on, the next travel abroad experience that I can, whatever it is. So that's my messianic in this world. So in general, the liquid modern worldview, and I don't know why I have a picture of Moby here, but interesting guy. So constant change, immediate irrelevance is rampant. Immediate irrelevance is rampant. No progress and there's no telos. The past is to be forgotten quickly to keep up. Virtues have radically shifted. No point in sacrificing your faith. And the only messianic is perpetually put off horizon of the consumer's hope of satisfaction. And that's the world, in some respects, we might say, that it seems like we are living in at the moment. Not that we all believe that, but it seems to be sort of the attitude of a lot of people in our age, or maybe even the spirit of the age, you might say. So options. Here's one option. Proceed as if nothing is different, and just hope for the best. That's optimism of one sort, right? Pretty passive optimism. And we do that. We do that in lots of different ways. We keep on having some of the same traditions over and over, and that can be very helpful in some respects to go back, keep going to, if you're used to going to church on Sundays, go to church on Sundays. Keep doing those things. Get back into the habit. You start having that book club you used to have before COVID, go back to that, and that's helpful. So there is some normality we want to get back to. But sometimes there's these shifts, and I'm thinking especially here for us as professors, where there have been pretty significant shifts in business, and then we just keep kind of teaching the same way over and over, because that's my syllabus, and it's really helpful. It gets pretty good responses from students, and so it'd be a lot of work to rework this. So I just keep working, keep doing it the same way over and over, right? And so just proceed as if nothing directly has happened. Don't bring up BLM or transgender things in my classroom. It's controversial. We're business. We don't talk about controversial social things. And so I know our students are struggling with that, but hopefully in the psych class, they'll get some help. Right? And so you can have those kind of attitudes that, well, we're not ethics, we're not theology, we're business. And so even those of us who are in Catholic schools who act that way sometimes, right? hopefully they're getting that help somewhere else, just not from me. Another option is to coast until retirement. I'm hopefully a ways away from retirement. My wife and I just found out we're having our first child in September, so I'll be 53. So I'll probably have to work at least another 22 years to get to college. So I'm not retiring anytime soon. But you can think, oh, maybe like how many years I got left? I think you can probably just keep doing it this way until I retire or something. You know, so you can have those kind of thoughts that go through your head. And I know I have friends that have thought that way about it. Play it safe and go with the flow. So just kind of what adjustments are suggested, I'll do those. Okay, I need to insert a little bit here, insert a little bit there. Okay. Policy and PR our way through these things. So what am I thinking of there? Well, I don't know if I remember all the ones I was thinking of, but you might say, oh, I mean, this has happened at Creighton in some respects. Sort of in response to BLM concerns, this year the president had four nationally known speakers come and talk to us who are African Americans. And so we had them come and talk to us, and that's great, but that doesn't really deal with the problem, right? It doesn't deal with like our students don't know how to talk about those things. Having some speaker come in and talk to us about it, that's not helping our students figure out how to think through those things, right? So you have these policies and PRs, or, you know, from now on, we're only going to say this, or we're only going to say this about such. Those don't really help our students. Having, you know, whatever, having pronoun policies about students, that doesn't help anyone talk about the issues and what's going on and what people think about those things. So policy and PRing our way through these things alone is not enough. None of these things alone are enough, except maybe retirement, right, John? Right. John's retiring next Thursday, so but not for these reasons, I know. So these are just ways that I fail. So this is pretty personal here. I love during COVID to just go in my office. No one was there at school, so I go to my office and I read a lot, and I wrote a lot of articles during COVID. It was great. Just escaping into my own little world. I kind of kept doing my online classes fine, but I wasn't very engaged in it. Just escaped in my own little world and tried not to watch the news very much. That's not really helpful. I mean, it's not helpful to like constantly be inundated with Ukraine news either. But you know, to escape the world in my own way was to do it through academia. Spread myself too thin. This is a constant problem for me, and I don't know if it is for you too, but spread myself too thin. So I'm not able to really do magics in the world, to do excellence in the way I should. And part of that's from overcommitting. It's been helpful to have a kid coming on the way because I've started to think, what am I going to disconnect from? What am I not doing next year that I did this year? There's one Vegas class. I've been doing a Vegas class to Vegas over spring break for 15 years. I'm not doing it next year. I've made a decision. My wife let me become the executive director of Business Ethics Society on the condition that I don't go to other conferences. So we'll see how that goes. But we're trying to commit to that. So those kind of things, right? I oftentimes substitute busyness for reflection because if I got stuff done, I think, oh, I'm doing well. But that's not the reflection that's necessary for us to really be thinking about what am I doing with my life? What am I accomplishing? Not just accomplishing a bunch, but like, what am I doing and why am I doing this? And part of that then goes to losing my focus, forgetting my values and my calling. God's given me a calling, and I believe that strongly. And so I got to figure out what is that? What am I uniquely called to? What am I positioned to do? Other people can do this. Other people can do that. What do I need to focus on and really be confident in that and focus on those things and not get distracted by other good things? And then lastly, think of students and colleagues as work. This is how I fail. I think of them as work, not as opportunities for human engagement. And so it was really good for me a couple of weeks ago to go on that Encounter Christ retreat. I was like, I'm going to be with students for 48 hours straight all the time. Like, that's going to be a lot for me, but it was good. And I really love those connections with the students. So sometimes you just have to force yourself to get back into those modes after being out of touch with people for so long over COVID. So these are my suggestions for you. And some of these are pretty personal as well, but be taking time for self and family. A really good friend of mine that, he's a friend of mine, I'll say that. A friend of mine who's very involved in a really great organization. He's got it off the ground, he's got it running, it's doing a lot of good. And he just told me last week he's His wife filed for divorce while he was gone for one of these meetings about this great project he's got going, right? Something's gone wrong in his personal relationship with his wife. And he's not paying attention there like he should have. So you have to be very careful about that. That's really got to be a priority. Because you can do all kinds of amazing things and set back your family life significantly. And probably all of us know of cases of that if we haven't experienced it ourselves. Be taking time to reflect regularly, on a regular basis, whether that's prayer, whether that's meditation, whatever that is. You need to be doing that regularly. You be thinking about, what am I up to here? What do I need to be paying attention to today? What do I need to listen for? You don't listen. I don't. Sorry. Maybe you listen well. I don't. Being intentional. It's not selfish. What is it? Be in an intentional sounding board relation with a mentor or friend. That's what SB is. So being an intentional sounding board relation with a mentor or friend. Have at least one friend or mentor. And hopefully you do. If you don't, have somebody that you can bounce stuff off and get feedback. And there's someone who, Nietzsche says, good friends are the ones who will tell you you're being an idiot. And what you're doing is stupid and you need to stop that. Your acquaintances, they'll say all kinds of flattering things about you. But your real friends are the ones who will say, stupid, don't do that anymore. Right? You need a friend like that. Audit your commitments. So go through your commitments and figure out what can go here. What should I not keep on doing? What do I need to focus on so I can be really excellent at it? And what do I need to say, you know what, I don't have to be in 8 different clubs on campus. I could just be in 5 and do them really well, or maybe even 3, or whatever it is, right? For each of us at different levels, you have different things to question. Work at rebuilding community on campus. I'm concerned about this at Creighton, but I'm concerned about this everywhere. I think as we've all gotten into habits of coming in, teaching our class and going home, or maybe not even coming in and teach class, there's been a disruption of community in our own immediate communities. And so we've got to figure out ways to make that happen. At Creighton, I don't know what it's like here. The Jesuits, it's always, alcohol helps, but that's not enough. Frankly speaking, there's got to be more than that to get people together and have good community. So rebuilding that community has got to be intentional. It's not just going to happen on its own because we get into our habits. We don't get out of those habits unless we get shoved out of those habits a lot of times, or lured out of their habits, right? Lured back. Revise your classes to reflect the current milieu. So I would encourage you, if you haven't changed things, shifted things up in light of some of the concerns we talked about at the front of this talk, think about that. How can I bring those in more in a positive way? And how can you help students consider positive ways to use AI, BD, et cetera, for the common good? So not just like, oh, these things are bad, Facebook, disconnect from Facebook, but how can we use these things really for the common good? And what can we do as agents of change to reconceive of how we use these in a responsible manner? Because if we don't, I'm afraid it's going to cause a lot more harm in our society. So we have to figure out how to do it. Disrupt the students' passivity. Last week I was at this humanistic management group, and one faculty from Fordham had a great thing that she makes her students do. She teaches it's a management class. And so she makes all of her students go get rejected publicly 11 times. One of them has to be on video. So it can be like at the grocery store, you just go up to some stranger and you're like, can you tie my shoe for me? Or they take a grocery, like you're waiting to get a grocery cart and somebody else takes one, you're like, can I have this one? Like to just see what happens, or say to someone you don't know, may I borrow $50? And the students are very frightened of this because they don't like that kind of engagement and that kind of interaction, right? They're sometimes pretty passive and they're like, I have to get rejected 11 times? Yeah, and one of them has to get a video. Like, oh crap. But it's good for them, right? It's not an intellectual exercise. It's like a heart exercise. I'm doing something that's going to shape. One of her students went on from that, and she actually got 7,000 more at her new job because she said, well, would you consider giving me 10,000 more? They're like, maybe not 10, I guess maybe do 7. That class paid off so well, right? So these kind of things, we're helping our students. We're helping our students just become more engaged. Because some of them are great, and there's no problems there, but there's others that just need a little bit more pushing to help them to feel comfortable engaging and being more open and out in the open. My wife teaches philosophy and ethics at a school in Omaha too, a women's college called St. Mary. And she said, she just had an exercise, last week she was talking to one of her students, and every morning in class, she writes a question on the board. She says, talk to one of the people in class about this question and what your answers are. So she's trying to build community, right? This is 12 weeks into class, and she said, well, can't you talk to like one of the others? What other student do you know? And she's like, I don't know anyone in my class. He's like, how do you not know them? You talk to them every morning. I've never asked their name. That's just something you do, but not everyone knows that, right? So how do you help your students like ask, what's your name? And get to know people's name. That's an important part of showing them concern and dignity and those kind of things. So how do we help our students in those ways? And we need to do it. And help students learn to make judgments. I think it's hard in my classes and in my colleagues' classes. He'll bring up something like Tyrannos example. It seems like obviously this was evil. What the guy did was evil, and then he'll try to get the students to say, "Don't you think that was wrong?" And they're like, "Well, they're trying to make money, and that's good, right?" Like, so how do we help students to make judgments, right? And to feel confident, like, you've got to make a judgment. I think in my business ethics class, I'm going to steal from that management professor, because one of the hardest things to do is to tell someone they're wrong, whistleblowing. And so I'm going to have this assignment where they have to go out and tell at least 3 people that they're wrong for something. And that's be someone they know. Like, I've known this a long time and I should have told you before, but what you do there, that's not the appropriate way to do that. Or you need to wash your dishes more, and I just haven't said anything, but I need to tell you that. Whatever it would be, just so that they have an experience of telling someone they're wrong, saying that was wrong, and I think you should change your behavior. That's hard, I think, for our students these days. Okay, so what did I do? Okay, so these are just a couple other examples of things going on. Humanistic management, I'm not going to go through all this, but it's a great organization out of Fordham. They're putting together a manifesto. They've got a lot of cool stuff to try to figure out how do we make management more human and help our students to think about how to be more human-centric in the way that they manage people. And I think that's a great project. Inspirational paradigm for Jesuit business education. That's all the rage over in the Jesuit schools right now. So they say students hunger for experiential learning, integrated knowledge, moral compass, community, global paradigm, adult spirituality, and dignified work and meaningful impact. All those things really are connected, I think, with what we're talking about today. So there's different groups like that that are trying to get this going. And there might be some of the Franciscans, I don't even know that, for sure, one way or the other. We've been looking into those things, because those can be at least co-partners that you can feel encouraged to be doing these things and learn examples from them. Provide alternatives. I always use stirring it up in my class, because it's a whole bunch of different companies like, I don't even know, Cliffs Bar and New Belgium Brewery and all those different companies that make a lot of money, and they also save the planet, right? They're doing both at the same time. So it's just good for students to see those. And we can find plenty of those examples. Net Positive is another good book like that. Pushing questions, what money can't buy. So what shouldn't be for sale, right? Sandel has a great book on that. And Peter Singer, I don't know if you know him, the utilitarian, Most Too Good You Can Do. That book has been very challenging for my MBA students, because he says, for example, he has this nice TED talk where he talks about, suppose that he's Australian. I'll try not to fall into Australia next. But suppose you come upon $20,000 and you think, I want to do something nice for people that are struggling. And he says, blind people, they struggle a lot. I want to help blind people. So you decide, I'm going to find out how much it costs to train a seeing eye dog. And in fact, it costs $20,000. So you say, I'm going to train a seeing eye dog, but that will be a seeing eye dog for that person, maybe for 20 years. So that on average, it's only $1,000 a year. That's less than $85 a month. That's pretty good. I'm willing to do that to help this blind person. He said, but then suppose I told you that there's this disease in Africa called river blindness, and it can cause people to gradually go blind over time because a worm gets into their skin and gets into their, but it actually can be stopped and even reversed at times. And the antidote for that and the treatment for it is $20 per person. So you can treat 1,000 people with river blindness, curing some, stopping their blindness, or you can buy a seeing eye dog. Which do you think you should do? He says, I think the answer is obvious. But in my MBA classes, they're like, if I give to charity, it's nobody else's business. They don't want to make a judgment about one is better than the other. No, I'm giving to charity, so that's already good. So you can't judge me. I want to give to the three-legged dog society instead of giving over here to something that will save humanity, because I like dogs more than humans, so what? So there's this real resistance to judgment, especially about what I give money to, charity. So, but this raises interesting questions that a lot of them are uncomfortable with and maybe have not thought about very much before. Faith in business, I always like to have them read Vocation of the Business Leader. That's pretty easy, it's online, it's a quick read. But there's a lot of things like that. If you can afford to put in a day of that, it's worth it, I think. This is my last quote, and it's actually of my parents, who are both gone now. My dad had me when he was 48, so I've been around a while, and he's been gone just a little bit. But the revelation, this is from Gabriel Marcel, or I don't know if you're familiar with him or not. He's very impactful to me, but this quote is that the revelation is that life is a gift, and that I am fortunate to be in the world. So he says, thus it is only insofar as I somehow become gratefully conscious of this revelation that I can come to apprehend my life and my own life as a gift. So I think that's a challenge for all of us. How can we think, and in spite of all these troubling things we talked about at the beginning, how can we still maintain a positive view and a view of this is a gift? Gabriel Marcel he was in direct conflict with Sartre. Jean-Paul Sartre said, others are a threat to me. Everyone else is a threat. And so I'm nervous about other people. And Marcel said, oh, everyone is a gift to you. Life is a gift. That's the right response of faith. That this is a gift, what I have is a gift. And so it gives me a certain perspective as I encounter issues that are challenging to me, and as I encounter my students and my colleagues. So I think we have a lot of work to do to try to rebuild community in our own, among our own colleagues and in our own communities, whatever they might be, in your parish and your other communities that you're involved in. So take that seriously, though. I mean, we need to be, I know you're not Jesuits, but we need to be agents of change. And we need to help make this, because if we're not thinking about this and we're not making intentional decisions to make those changes, then who's going to do that, right? So we really need to be thoughtful about that. And that's what I would encourage you to do going forward. So my very last, because some of you don't know where Nebraska is, that's where it is. Of all the Jesuit schools, we're right there in the middle. So that's where Creighton is. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you, really, did a great job. Thank you for sharing your perspective with us and giving me so much to think about. And I really, really like the idea of intentionally trying to make the world a better place. You know, so really, you did a great job. Thank you. We have two girls that want to come up here and give you a present. Speech.
All right, so the plaque that I have here was actually handcrafted by a student here at St. Bonaventure, Parker Bray, and he's the CEO of Race the Bar.
Yes, and he recently was a part of the innovation competition of our innovation center.
Wow. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, everybody. We can hang out and chat, or we have all day tomorrow. So it's great that everyone was here. Thanks.
Thank you.